Hello everyone, and welcome back to another video from Gone Legends. In today's video, we'll be highlighting American celebrities who passed away today, and in recent days, along with other notable individuals from around the world. Before we proceed, we kindly ask for your support. If you find these tributes meaningful, please take a moment to like this video. It truly means a lot to us. Thank you for being here. And now, let's begin. 1.
Mike Wagner, on February 18, 2026, at the age of 76, Mike Wagner passed away after a prolonged illness, marking the end of a life defined by toughness, discipline, and championship excellence. Born in 1949 in Waukegan, Illinois, Wagner grew up with a quiet determination that would later define his football career. Drafted in the 11th round of the 1971 NFL Draft, he exceeded expectations and became a vital part of the Pittsburgh Steelers' legendary steel curtain defense. As a safety, Wagner was known for his intelligence, precise positioning, and ability to read offenses with remarkable clarity. Over 10 seasons, he helped lead the Steelers to 4 Super Bowl victories and recorded 36 career interceptions. Beyond statistics, he symbolized consistency and resilience. Teammates respected his calm leadership and fans admired his relentless commitment. His legacy remains deeply rooted in one of the greatest defensive dynasties in NST's and NS contributions, continue to inspire generations of athletes who value grit over glamour.
2.
Lil Papa, on February 18, 2026. Lil Papa tragically passed away at just 25 years old due to complications from a sudden medical emergency. Born Janarius Michael Wheeler in 1994 in Jacksonville, Florida, he emerged from challenging beginnings to become a powerful voice in modern hip-hop. His music blended vulnerability with melodic Southern rap, offering listeners an honest reflection of struggle, ambition, and resilience. With projects like Blessed, I Guess, he gained national attention for his raw storytelling and emotional authenticity. Lil Papa's lyrics often painted vivid portraits of street life while also expressing hope and self-reflection. Fans connected deeply with his openness, seeing their own experiences mirrored in his words. Though his life was brief, his influence on young listeners and the hip-hop community remains profound. His voice, once filled with passion and purpose, continues to echo through the music he left behind.
3.
Frederick Wiseman, on February 16, 2006, Frederick Wiseman passed away at the age of 96 from natural causes, concluding a groundbreaking career that reshaped documentary filmmaking. Born in 1930 in Boston, Massachusetts, Wiseman devoted his life to observing institutions and human behavior with quiet precision. His films, including Titicut Follies and City Hall, explored schools, hospitals, courts, and cultural organizations without narration, allowing viewers to confront reality directly. Over 6 decades, he created more than 40 documentaries that became essential examinations of American society. Wiseman's approach was patient, immersive, and fearless, revealing both the strengths and flaws of the systems that shape everyday life. He believed deeply in presenting truth without manipulation. His legacy endures not only in film history, but also in the way documentary storytelling continues to evolve under his influence.
4.
Robert Duvall, on February 15, 2006. Robert Duvall passed away peacefully at the age of 95 due to age-related causes, closing the curtain on one of Hollywood's most respected careers. Born in 1931 in San Diego, California, Duvall became a master of subtle, deeply human performances. His early breakthrough in To Kill a Mockingbird introduced audiences to his quiet intensity, while his role as Tom Hagen in The Godfather solidified his reputation as a commanding screen presence. Winning the Academy Award for Tender Mercies, Duvall demonstrated remarkable emotional depth and authenticity. Throughout 7 decades, he portrayed complex characters with honesty and restraint, earning admiration from critics and peers alike. His dedication to the craft of acting left a lasting imprint on cinema. Even in his absence, Robert Duvall's performances continue to captivate audiences, ensuring his legacy remains timeless.
5.
Tree Johnson, on February 15, 2006, Tree Johnson died unexpectedly at the age of 54 after suffering a sudden medical episode while on a family trip. Born in 1971 in New York City, Johnson rose to prominence as a powerful offensive guard in the National Football League. Drafted in 1994, he became a respected leader on the field, earning Pro Bowl honors in 1999. Known for his strength and discipline, he played with determination and professionalism. After retiring from football, Johnson dedicated himself to education, becoming a history teacher and mentor who guided countless young students. His transition from professional athlete to educator reflected his character and commitment to service. Johnson's legacy is defined not only by athletic achievement, but also by the positive impact he had on the lives of those he taught and inspired.
6.
John Viola. On February 14, 2026, John Viola passed away at the age of 75 after battling a prolonged illness, closing the chapter on a life devoted to public service and community leadership. Born in 1950 in the United States, Viola grew up with a deep respect for civic responsibility and the belief that leadership meant service before self. He later became a dedicated member of the Delaware House of Representatives, where he served his constituents with integrity, patience, and unwavering commitment. Throughout his years in office, Viola focused on strengthening local communities, supporting working families, and advocating for practical policies that improved everyday lives. Colleagues often described him as thoughtful and steady, someone who valued listening as much as speaking. He approached politics not as a platform for personal recognition, but as a means to create lasting positive change. His presence in public life was marked by consistency and compassion. Even after stepping away from office, his influence continued through the relationships he built and the legislation he helped shape. John Viola's legacy is defined not by headlines, but by quiet dedication and meaningful service.
7.
Tom Noonan. On February 14, 2026, Tom Noonan passed away at the age of 74 following complications related to a long-term illness, leaving behind a career marked by intensity, intelligence, and artistic depth. Born in 1951 in Greenwich, Connecticut, Noonan developed a passion for performance early in life, eventually studying drama and dedicating himself fully to the craft of acting. His distinctive presence, tall, thoughtful, and commanding, made him unforgettable on both stage and screen. He gained widespread recognition for his haunting portrayal of Francis Dolarhyde in Manhunter, a performance that showcased his ability to inhabit complex and emotionally layered characters. Over the years, Noonan appeared in numerous films and television productions, earning respect for his dedication and versatility. Beyond acting, he also explored writing and directing, demonstrating a deep understanding of storytelling from every angle. He was admired by peers for his intellectual approach to art and his refusal to settle for superficial roles. Tom Noonan's legacy remains in the powerful performances he delivered, quiet, compelling, and unforgettable.
8.
Bud Cort. On February 11, 2026, Bud Cort passed away at the age of 77 due to complications from pneumonia after a period of declining health. Born in 1948 in New Rochelle, New York, Cort became known as one of Hollywood's most uniquely expressive actors. He rose to prominence with his unforgettable role in the cult classic Harold and Maude, a film that captured audiences with its unconventional humor and tender exploration of life and mortality. Cort's portrayal was sensitive, quirky, and deeply human, turning him into a symbol of individuality and emotional authenticity. Throughout his career, he embraced roles that challenged norms and celebrated uniqueness, often choosing characters that reflected vulnerability and introspection. Though he never sought mainstream superstardom, his influence on independent cinema and cult film culture was profound. Bud Cort's work continues to resonate with audiences who appreciate storytelling that dares to be different. His legacy is one of gentle rebellion, artistic courage, and heartfelt sincerity that will endure for generations to come.
9.
Shelley Desai. On February 12, 2026, Shelley Desai passed away peacefully at the age of 90 due to natural causes related to age, marking the end of a long and graceful life in the American entertainment industry. Born in 1936 in the United States, Desai grew up during a golden era of stage and screen, developing a passion for acting at a young age. His early fascination with storytelling led him to pursue performance professionally, where he gradually built a respected and enduring career. Shelley Desai became known as a dependable and versatile American actor, admired for his quiet intensity and disciplined approach to his craft. While he may not always have been the headline star, he consistently delivered thoughtful performances that elevated every production he joined. From television appearances to film roles and stage performances, Desai brought authenticity and depth to each character, earning the respect of directors and fellow actors alike. Throughout decades of change in Hollywood, he adapted with professionalism and humility, proving that longevity in the arts requires both talent and character. Those who worked with him often described him as gracious, patient, and deeply committed to storytelling. Though his passing on February 12, 2006, brought sadness to colleagues and admirers, Shelley Desai leaves behind a legacy rooted in dedication, integrity, and a lifelong love for acting that will continue to be remembered.
10.
Before the world knew his name, before stadiums of fans cheered for him, before engines roared and fists shattered across cinema screens, there was a young man standing alone in uncertainty, questioning everything. Long before Jason Statham became one of the most recognizable action stars in modern film history, he lived through years that felt invisible. Years of rejection, years of doubt, years where survival meant swallowing pride. Which power writer born on July 26, 1967, in Shirebrook, Derbyshire, England, Jason grew up in a working-class household where nothing came easily. His father was a street seller and occasional performer. His mother worked tirelessly to support the family. There was no safety net, no Hollywood connections, no glamorous beginnings. And yet, the greatest struggles of his life did not begin in poverty. They began in obscurity. As a teenager, Jason poured himself into sports. Diving became his identity. For over a decade, he trained relentlessly, earning a place on Britain's national diving squad. 12 years of discipline, 12 years of sacrifice. Endless mornings before sunrise, countless bruises, controlled falls from heights that would terrify most people. But here is what people rarely understand about professional athletes. Not everyone becomes a champion. Jason competed internationally, yes. He represented England, yes. But he never reached Olympic glory. He never became a household sports hero. And when his diving career quietly ended, there were no farewell tributes, no dramatic send-offs, just silence. Imagine dedicating over a decade of your youth to something, only to walk away without fame, without fortune, without certainty about what comes next. That silence can be crushing. For Jason, it was. In his late 20s, he found himself adrift. The structure of professional training disappeared. The identity he had built for himself dissolved, and the world did not pause to comfort him. He worked on the streets of London selling jewelry and perfume, negotiating deals with strangers, learning to read expressions instantly. It was not glamorous. It was survival. There were moments, many of them, where his future seemed painfully small. No career plan, no financial security, no public recognition, just grit. And the truth is, those years shaped him far more than success ever could. He learned how to handle rejection without emotion. He learned how to stay calm under pressure. He learned how to look confident even when uncertainty clawed at his insides. But life was not done testing him. The late 1990s were filled with near misses and risk. Modeling gave him temporary stability, but it was not a dream. It was not a calling. It was work, useful work, but not fulfillment. Then came the audition that could have changed everything or nothing at all. When director Guy Ritchie was casting for Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels, Jason was not an established actor. He had no formal training, no dramatic background. He was an athlete and a street seller trying to step into a world dominated by trained performers. Rejection was a real possibility, and had that audition gone differently, had one decision shifted slightly, Jason Statham might have disappeared into history as another almost story, but he didn't. He seized the opportunity. Still, even after landing the role, there was no guarantee of long-term success. Independent British films do not always create international stars. Lock, Stock could have faded quietly. Instead, it exploded. Yet even then, Hollywood did not immediately open its doors. For years, Jason hovered between potential and permanence. Snatch gave him credibility, but credibility does not guarantee longevity. Studios were unsure what to do with him. He did not fit the traditional romantic lead image. He was not a classically trained dramatic actor. He was something else. Raw, intense, unpolished. There were whispers that he was too rigid, too serious, too physically focused, that he would never carry a major franchise. Those doubts followed him into the early 2000s. When The Transporter was being developed, producers were taking a risk. An English former diver with limited acting history leading an international action film? It was not a safe bet, and during filming, Jason pushed himself relentlessly, performing his own stunts, engaging in brutal fight choreography. Physical strain was constant. Injury was always a possibility. At one point during a stunt sequence involving water and vehicles, things nearly went wrong. Timing had to be precise. One miscalculation could have resulted in severe harm. This was not Kiji fantasy. This was a man risking his body for a chance at permanence, and still there was fear. If the film failed, his window might close forever. When the Transporter released in 2002, it did not merely succeed, it created a new archetype. But that success was fragile. Action stars burn bright and fade quickly. One flop can erase momentum. Jason faced that reality repeatedly. Several of his films in the mid-2000s struggled critically. Some were labeled repetitive. Some questioned his range. Criticism can destroy careers or strengthen resolve. For Jason, it became fuel. He refined his craft. He trained harder. He leaned into authenticity. He stopped trying to fit Hollywood's mold and instead carved his own. But even with success growing, danger never disappeared. During the filming of The Expendables 3, a stunt involving a truck nearly turned catastrophic when brake failure caused the vehicle to plunge into the Black Sea. For a terrifying moment, control was lost. The truck sank. Jason had seconds to escape. Seconds. That was not scripted drama. That was real life. He survived. Calm, focused, composed. Because long before he was an action hero on screen, he had trained himself to stay steady under pressure. Yet perhaps the greatest danger he faced was not physical. It was typecasting, the fear of becoming predictable, replaceable, forgotten. Many action stars from the past faded when trends changed. The industry evolves quickly. Superheroes dominate. Streaming shifts attention. Audiences move on. Jason had to evolve without abandoning what made him unique. Joining the Fast and Furious franchise as Deckard Shaw was another gamble. Introduced as a villain, he risked rejection from loyal fans. Instead, he transformed the character into one of the franchise's most compelling figures. He proved adaptability, he proved longevity, and perhaps most importantly, he proved that discipline never goes out of style. Jason Statham is alive today. He continues to work, continues to train, continues to push himself beyond comfort. But behind the global fame is a man forged in uncertainty. A diver who walked away without medals. A street seller who built resilience on sidewalks. An actor who faced skepticism at every stage. His worst moments were quiet, unseen, internal, and those moments built the foundation of everything that followed. This is not the story of effortless success. This is the story of a man who refused to disappear. And we are only at the beginning. There comes a moment in every life when hesitation must end, when doubt must be silenced, when the comfort of the familiar must be abandoned for the terrifying possibility of something greater. For Jason Statham, that moment did not arrive with applause. It arrived quietly, disguised as risk. After Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels and Snatch, Jason had earned attention, but attention is not permanence. In Hollywood, momentum can vanish overnight. Offers came, but they were uncertain. Small roles, supporting parts, characters without depth. The industry saw potential, but not yet inevitability. And then came the script that would test everything. The Transporter. At first glance, it was a straightforward action thriller, a professional driver who lives by strict rules, a job that goes wrong, enemies closing in from every direction. But beneath the simplicity of the plot was something much more dangerous for Jason: responsibility. This would not be an ensemble. This would not be a background performance. This would rest on his shoulders. If it failed, the blame would follow him. He understood that. Producers questioned whether audiences would accept a relatively unknown British actor as a leading action star. Studios were cautious. The early 2000s were dominated by larger-than-life American heroes. Jason did not fit that template. He was leaner, quieter, controlled rather than explosive, but what they underestimated was discipline. Jason insisted on performing his own stunts, not for ego, not for headlines, for authenticity. Years of diving had trained him to trust his body mid-air. Martial arts had conditioned him to move with precision. When cameras rolled, he did not mimic danger, he stepped into it. The fight scenes were brutal and intimate. There was no flashy choreography meant to look pretty. It was tight, efficient combat, real impact, real sweat, real strain, and audiences noticed. But filming was not without risk. One sequence required complex underwater timing combined with moving vehicles. Another demanded high-speed coordination that left no room for error. The margin between success and catastrophe was razor thin. A misjudged movement could mean broken bones, a delayed reaction could mean worse, and in those moments something transformed inside him. Fear did not disappear. It sharpened. The release of The Transporter in 2002 did not merely introduce a character named Frank Martin. It introduced a new archetype. A man of rules, a man of precision, a man who spoke little but acted decisively. Audiences around the world connected with that controlled intensity. Suddenly, Jason Statham was no longer a former athlete trying to survive the film industry. He was an emerging action force. But success brings a new kind of pressure. Sequels were commissioned, expectations grew, critics began watching closely. Could he sustain it? Was he a one-film phenomenon? Or could he anchor a franchise? The Transporter 2 pushed everything further, bigger fights, higher stakes, more elaborate stunts. The physical toll intensified, training consumed his schedule, diet became strict, sleep became secondary to preparation. Maintaining that level of performance was not glamorous, it was exhausting. Yet he never complained publicly. Because for Jason, this was not simply acting, it was proving he belonged. Then came Crank in 2006, a film so chaotic and high concept that many actors might have hesitated. The premise alone sounded outrageous. A man poisoned with a synthetic drug that will kill him if his heart rate drops. The character must keep his adrenaline high to stay alive. It was absurd, it was relentless, and it required fearless commitment. Jason embraced the madness fully. He did not play it safe. He leaned into the frantic pacing, the dark humor, the almost surreal intensity. The film became a cult classic, not because it was polished, but because it was unapologetically bold. By now, Hollywood could no longer dismiss him. But just as his star was rising, a new challenge emerged: sustainability. Action careers are fragile, injuries accumulate, audiences tire, trends shift. Many stars burn bright and fade quickly. Jason understood this better than most. He diversified within his lane. The Mechanic showed a colder, more calculated side. Safe and Homefront revealed glimpses of emotional restraint beneath the hardened exterior. He did not suddenly become a dramatic actor in romantic dramas. Instead, he refined nuance within intensity. And then, in 2010, something symbolic happened. He joined The Expendables, standing alongside Sylvester Stallone, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Bruce Willis, legends of the 1980s and 1990s. Jason represented the bridge between generations. He was no longer chasing relevance, he was embodying it. Yet danger was never far. During the filming of The Expendables 3, a stunt involving a heavy truck went catastrophically wrong. The brakes reportedly failed during a sequence near the Black Sea. The vehicle plunged into the water. For a few suspended seconds, reality replaced fiction. The truck sank rapidly. Jason had to escape underwater before the weight pulled everything down. There were no rehearsed heroics in that moment, no slow-motion soundtrack, just survival. He emerged shaken but alive, and he returned to work. That is who he is, resilience not as performance but as instinct. In 2013, he entered the Fast and Furious universe as Deckard Shaw. Initially positioned as a ruthless antagonist, it was a calculated risk. Fans were fiercely loyal to the franchise. Introducing a new villain carried uncertainty, but Jason infused Shaw with charisma, intelligence, and dry wit. The character evolved, from adversary to anti-hero, from threat to ally. By the time Hobbs and Shaw was released in 2019, he was co-leading a global blockbuster opposite Dwayne Johnson. The film grossed hundreds of millions worldwide, confirming what had once been doubted. He was bankable. Yet behind the box office numbers remained the same core principles: discipline, preparation, physical excellence, control. Jason never relied heavily on digital shortcuts. He trained relentlessly. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, kickboxing, functional strength, every movement on screen backed by real capability. And still, even at the height of global recognition, he remained measured, private, grounded. The breaking point in his life was never a single dramatic collapse. It was cumulative uncertainty, years where nothing was guaranteed, years where he could have retreated into safety. Instead, he chose exposure. He chose risk. He chose to step forward when retreat would have been easier. And that decision transformed him from a former diver searching for direction into one of modern cinema's most enduring action figures. But fame does not shield a person from internal battles. In the next chapter, we move beyond the explosions and fight choreography into the psychological weight of expectation, identity, and the quiet burden of becoming a global symbol of strength. Fame is a strange companion. It arrives loudly, but settles quietly. For Jason Statham, global recognition did not feel like a celebration. It felt like a responsibility. By the time he entered the 2010s, he was no longer fighting for visibility. He was fighting to maintain identity. Success had given him something many spend their lives chasing: influence, wealth, power within his craft. But it had also given him something heavier: expectation. Audiences now expected a certain presence when they saw his name, a controlled storm, a calm intensity, physical dominance wrapped in silence. Studios expected reliability, box office performance, market value, and somewhere inside that machinery of global cinema was still the same man who once sold jewelry on London streets. The danger at this stage of a career is not failure. It is becoming a brand instead of a person. Action cinema in the 2010s was evolving rapidly. Superhero franchises dominated screens. Computer-generated spectacle became the norm. Actors were encased in digital armor, suspended on wires, enhanced by technology. Jason had built his reputation on physical authenticity. Now the question emerged quietly within industry circles: could his grounded style survive in a digital age? There were whispers that traditional action heroes were fading, that audiences preferred fantasy over realism, that practical stunts were becoming relics of another era. But Jason refused to chase trends blindly. Instead of transforming himself into something artificial, he doubled down on what made him distinct. He trained harder, refined his technique, embraced roles that demanded physical credibility. Films like The Mechanic and its sequel allowed him to explore a colder, more methodical character. Arthur Bishop was not loud. He was surgical, strategic, calculated. It was a subtle evolution from Frank Martin, less explosive, more restrained. That restraint revealed something important. Jason was not simply playing versions of himself. He was studying control. Yet, even as his career stabilized, the emotional weight of expectation grew heavier. When he joined the Fast and Furious franchise, stepping into the role of Deckard Shaw, he entered one of the largest cinematic universes in the world. It was not just another job, it was integration into a global phenomenon. His character was introduced as a villain, a direct threat to beloved heroes. That decision carried risk. Audiences could reject him permanently. The franchise could use him briefly and discard him. Instead, something remarkable happened. Viewers responded not only to his physical presence but to his dry humor, his layered intelligence, and the subtle humanity beneath the hardened exterior. Over time, Shaw evolved from antagonist to reluctant ally. It was a delicate balancing act, and Jason navigated it with precision. But evolution on screen mirrored an internal evolution off-screen. Jason was no longer the underdog fighting for relevance. He was now part of billion-dollar franchises. With that came scrutiny. Every performance dissected, every interview analyzed, every box office number measured against previous success. The fear at this level is not obscurity, it is stagnation. He faced criticism that his roles were too similar, that he operated within a narrow range, that he rarely ventured outside action. Those critiques could have pushed him into forced reinvention, into roles that felt unnatural or inauthentic. But Jason chose something different: consistency over chaos. He understood that not every actor must become everything. Some refine a craft so thoroughly that they become synonymous with excellence within it. And yet, even as critics debated his range, he surprised audiences. In Spy, 2015, alongside Melissa McCarthy, he delivered a performance laced with self-aware humor. He exaggerated the hyper-masculine spy persona with comedic timing that many did not expect. It revealed a willingness to laugh at his own image. That was not weakness, it was confidence. Behind the physical intensity was intelligence, awareness. A man who understood his persona well enough to bend it without breaking it. Meanwhile, his personal life was shifting. His relationship with model and actress Rosie Huntington-Whiteley deepened. Their partnership remained largely private, away from excessive publicity. In an industry built on spectacle, Jason protected his inner circle fiercely. Fatherhood brought another transformation. Becoming a parent reframes risk. It alters perception. It softens edges in places the public rarely sees. Though he remained dedicated to performing stunts, the stakes felt different. Every dangerous sequence carried an invisible question: what does survival mean now? And yet, he did not retreat from physical commitment. Instead, preparation intensified. By the time The Meg was released in 2018, Jason had stepped into large-scale blockbuster territory once again. Facing a prehistoric shark could easily have tipped into parody. But he grounded the film with sincerity. Audiences embraced it. The movie earned massive global revenue. He proved something crucial. He could adapt scale without sacrificing identity. Still, beneath all of it remained the quiet pressure of longevity. Action cinema history is filled with names that once dominated headlines and later faded. The body ages, reflexes slow, trends shift. Jason approached this reality with discipline rather than denial. Training became not just preparation for roles, but preservation of career. Brazilian jiu-jitsu, strength conditioning, mobility work. His routine was methodical, not flashy. He was not trying to outrun time, he was managing it. And perhaps that is the most invisible battle of all, staying relevant without losing self. Jason Statham never chased dramatic reinvention for applause. He built stability through reliability. He became the dependable presence in a volatile industry. But stability does not mean safety. Because in the next phase of his journey, the challenges would not come from critics or competition. They would come from within the industry itself, shifting power dynamics, streaming revolutions, and the uncertain future of theatrical action films. The landscape was changing, and once again he would need to adapt without surrendering what made him formidable. There is a quiet fear that lives inside every long-running career. It does not arrive with headlines. It does not scream. It whispers. What happens when the world changes and you don't? By the mid-2010s, Hollywood was no longer the industry Jason Statham had entered years before. Theatrical action films, once built on physical performance and grounded choreography, were being overshadowed by digital universes and interconnected superhero sagas. Studios were investing billions into caped icons and cosmic spectacles. Streaming platforms were rising rapidly, reshaping distribution, audience habits, and power structures. The cinematic battlefield was shifting, and in that shift, many traditional action stars found themselves drifting into irrelevance. Jason understood this reality clearly. He had built his reputation on realism, on tangible stunts, on physical credibility. But the industry was pivoting toward green screens and computer-generated chaos. The question was no longer whether he could handle demanding roles. The question was whether there would still be space for them. It is one thing to fight opponents on screen. It is another to fight invisibility. Instead of resisting change, Jason chose strategic alignment. He continued participating in global franchises, ensuring his presence remained woven into large-scale storytelling. His recurring role in the Fast and Furious series kept him connected to younger audiences while preserving his action credibility. But survival in Hollywood is not just about visibility, it is about perception. If he leaned too heavily into repetition, he risked becoming predictable. If he strayed too far from action, he risked alienating the core audience that had supported him for decades. It was a delicate balance. Films like Mechanic, Resurrection reinforced his mastery of precision-driven roles. Yet he also stepped into projects that expanded scale, such as The Meg, a film that blended creature feature spectacle with grounded intensity. It was not merely a monster movie. It was a calculated move combining blockbuster appeal with his signature physical realism. The success of The Meg proved something powerful. Audiences still valued presence. They still responded to a performer who looked capable of surviving what the script demanded. But beneath the box office triumphs lay the constant discipline required to maintain physical excellence. By this stage of his life, Jason was in his 50s, an age when many actors transition into softer roles or retreat from physically demanding work. He did neither. His training evolved. It became smarter, more efficient, less about brute force, more about mobility and endurance. Brazilian jiu-jitsu remained a core element. Functional strength routines replaced vanity lifting. Recovery became as important as intensity. Because the body, unlike a script, does not grant infinite retakes, every stunt required calculation, every jump carried consequence, and yet he continued to perform them. There is a psychological component to this commitment, a refusal to surrender capability, a determination to remain dangerous on screen, not through illusion, but through earned skill. Meanwhile, the entertainment industry faced unprecedented disruption. The global pandemic reshaped cinema itself. Theaters closed, productions halted, release schedules collapsed, streaming platforms surged. For actors whose careers depended on large theatrical releases, uncertainty returned in a way not felt in years. It was a strange echo of his early life unpredictability, lack of guarantees, shifting ground beneath his feet. But unlike the young diver searching for direction, this time Jason possessed something stronger than hope. He possessed adaptability. Projects resumed cautiously. Wrath of Man, directed by Guy Ritchie, reunited him with the filmmaker who had launched his career decades earlier. The film was darker, heavier, more restrained. It showcased a colder emotional spectrum, grief simmering beneath stoic control. Critics noted the maturity. The performance was not about speed or spectacle. It was about presence. That collaboration felt symbolic, a return to origins, but with deeper gravitas. Then came Operation Fortune, Ruse de Guerre, blending espionage with sharp humor. Once again, he demonstrated versatility within intensity. He did not reinvent himself dramatically. He refined tone, adjusted pacing, expanded nuance. By the time Meg 2, The Trench arrived, audiences saw something consistent, not stagnation, but stability. In an industry obsessed with reinvention, Jason represented reliability. But reliability requires vigilance, because complacency is the true enemy of longevity. Off-screen, he remained selective. He did not flood the market with random appearances. He chose projects that aligned with his strengths. He protected his mystique. Social media exposure remained controlled, interviews measured, public life disciplined. This restraint amplified his presence. In a world of oversharing, he maintained focus. Yet perhaps the most significant evolution was internal. With age comes perspective. The hunger that once drove him to prove himself gradually transformed into something steadier craftsmanship. He no longer needed to silence critics. He no longer needed to validate belonging. He had built an undeniable body of work. From Shirebrook to Hollywood, from diving boards to global franchises, from street stalls to red carpets. But the fight against becoming obsolete never fully disappears. It simply becomes quieter, more strategic. Jason Statham did not conquer Hollywood through dramatic transformation. He survived it through discipline. And survival, in an industry that devours careers quickly, is its own form of triumph. Yet beyond industry shifts and box office battles lies something more personal, the man behind the action figure, the father, the partner, the individual who carries scars unseen by cameras. In the next chapter, we move beyond career mechanics and into the private world of Jason Statham, exploring relationships, fatherhood, emotional restraint, and the human cost of living as a symbol of strength. Strength is easy to recognize when it explodes across a cinema screen. It is harder to see when it is quiet. For decades, audiences have watched Jason Statham move through fire, through bullets, through collapsing buildings and impossible odds. They have seen him unshaken, calculated, composed under pressure. But behind that controlled exterior exists a man who guards something far more fragile than reputation. He guards his private life. In an era where celebrity culture thrives on exposure, where personal struggles are broadcast and dissected instantly, Jason chose restraint. He did not build his brand on scandal. He did not monetize vulnerability. He did not flood the public sphere with daily glimpses into his personal routines. Instead, he protected his world. His relationship with Rosie Huntington-Whiteley began in 2010. At the time, both were navigating demanding careers and industries fueled by scrutiny. She, an internationally recognized model and actress. He, an action star balancing physical risk and growing global fame. Their connection was not constructed for spectacle. It developed quietly. There were no dramatic headlines announcing a whirlwind romance. No constant red carpet theatrics. What emerged instead was steadiness. Two individuals rooted in discipline, aware of the fragility of public perception. Over time, their partnership deepened into something more enduring. Fatherhood arrived as a transformative chapter. Becoming a parent reshapes identity in ways that fame cannot prepare you for. The stakes shift. The definition of risk changes. The meaning of legacy becomes personal. For a man whose career is built on calculated danger, this shift carried emotional weight. Stunts no longer represented only professional commitment, they carried invisible consequences. Each high-speed sequence, each fight choreography session, each physically demanding shoot now had a silent echo responsibility beyond the set. And yet, Jason did not withdraw from physical commitment. He adapted. Training became more intelligent, preparation more meticulous, recovery prioritized. Not because fear dominated him, but because perspective refined him. There is a difference between recklessness and courage. Jason has never confused the two. In interviews, he rarely speaks at length about personal emotion. His demeanor remains measured, direct, efficient. But silence should not be mistaken for absence of depth. It is simply discipline applied inward. Maintaining privacy in Hollywood is an act of defiance. The industry rewards oversharing. It feeds on accessibility. But mystique, once lost, is nearly impossible to reclaim. Jason understood that from the beginning. He allowed his work to speak loudly while his personal life remained shielded. Occasional glimpses into family moments appeared carefully curated, respectful, controlled, not to create narrative, but to acknowledge reality. That boundary has preserved something rare: authenticity. Beyond fatherhood and partnership lies another dimension of his private life: loyalty to his roots. Despite global success, he has never attempted to erase his British identity. His accent remains intact, his demeanor remains grounded. He has not reshaped himself into a manufactured Hollywood archetype. That consistency reflects something deeper than branding. It reflects self-awareness. Jason Statham does not pretend to be more complex than he is, nor does he diminish the complexity he carries. He understands his strengths. He respects his limitations. He refines what works and discards what distracts. There is a quiet humility in that approach. Perhaps it stems from his early years, from diving competitions where applause was fleeting, from street selling where rejection was constant, from auditions where nothing was guaranteed. Success did not inflate him. It stabilized him, but even stability carries weight. Maintaining physical excellence into his 50s requires sacrifice. Strict diet, relentless training, early mornings, controlled routine. There is glamour in headlines, but monotony in preparation. Discipline is repetitive, and repetition, when sustained over decades, demands mental resilience. Yet he continues, because for Jason, action is not performance alone. It is identity. Still, identity evolves. As children grow, as time moves forward, as the industry continues shifting beneath him, new questions emerge quietly. What does longevity look like now? How long can physical dominance remain the centerpiece? When does transition become necessary? These questions do not signal weakness. They signal foresight. Jason Statham has built a career on physical credibility, but he has also built a life on measured choices. He does not rush decisions. He does not chase noise. He navigates carefully. And perhaps that is his greatest unseen strength. In the next chapter, we explore the philosophy behind his discipline, the mindset that transformed a former diver into a global action icon, the psychology of control, the rituals of preparation, the internal code that governs his career and character. Long before the cameras rolled, before the explosions, before the controlled chaos of cinematic combat, Jason Statham was shaped by something far less visible and far more demanding: discipline. Not the kind that appears in motivational speeches, not the kind that is announced proudly, but the quiet, relentless discipline built in cold swimming pools, on diving platforms where hesitation meant failure, in training halls where repetition was the only path to improvement. To understand Jason Statham, you must understand the code he lives by. His foundation was not acting school. It was competitive sport. As a member of Britain's national diving squad for over a decade, he trained in an environment where precision determined outcome. A single miscalculation in midair could destroy months of preparation. A fraction of imbalance could cost everything. Diving is not about aggression. It is about control. That philosophy followed him into adulthood. When his athletic career ended without Olympic glory, he did not collapse under disappointment. He absorbed it, adjusted, redirected. That adaptability became the core of his mindset. There is a misconception about action stars that they thrive on chaos. Jason thrives on structure. His daily routine, even now, reflects that principle. Early rising, purposeful training, mobility drills, functional strength circuits, Brazilian jiu-jitsu sessions that demand technical patience rather than brute force. Nutrition calculated not for aesthetics alone, but for performance sustainability. He does not train for photographs. He trains for capability, and capability builds confidence. On set, this mindset translates into preparation that borders on obsession. Fight choreography is studied meticulously, timing rehearsed repeatedly, movements broken down into exact sequences. He does not rely on last-minute improvisation when physical risk is involved. Improvisation is reserved for performance nuance. The body is prepared in advance. That separation between spontaneity and preparation defines his professionalism. Directors have often noted his punctuality, his efficiency, his lack of unnecessary theatrics. He arrives ready. He leaves without drama. There is an old-school quality to that approach. In an era where celebrity sometimes overshadows craftsmanship, Jason remains focused on execution. But discipline is not merely physical, it is emotional. Public persona can easily distort private identity. Fame can inflate ego. Wealth can erode hunger. Yet throughout decades of increasing visibility, he has maintained a consistent demeanor, direct, understated, rarely excessive. That restraint is deliberate. He understands that mystique amplifies impact. Overexposure dilutes presence. Silence, when chosen carefully, becomes strength. The psychological code he operates by seems simple on the surface. Work hard, remain prepared, avoid unnecessary noise. But beneath that simplicity lies a deeper awareness. He knows what it means to start without advantage. He knows what it means to dedicate years to a path that does not guarantee reward. He knows how quickly opportunity can vanish. Those memories prevent complacency. When filming physically demanding sequences, he does not approach them with arrogance. He approaches them with calculation. Risk assessment is constant. Where is the margin for error? Where does control end and unpredictability begin? Even the near-fatal truck accident during the filming of The Expendables 3, when brake failure sent the vehicle plunging into water, did not alter his philosophy toward panic. Survival required clarity. Panic wastes oxygen. Control preserves it. That moment reinforced something he had trained his entire life to embody: calm under threat. This same composure defines his on-screen characters. Whether portraying Frank Martin, Arthur Bishop, or Deckard Shaw, there is a through line of measured response. He rarely plays hysteria. He rarely plays chaos. His characters calculate before they strike, because Jason himself calculates before he moves. Yet discipline also demands sacrifice. Strict diet eliminates indulgence. Social spontaneity is limited. Sleep schedules are protected. Travel becomes logistical strategy rather than adventure. Maintaining peak condition into one's 50s is not accidental. It is chosen repeatedly day after day. There are easier paths available to him now. He could accept lighter roles. He could transition entirely into production. He could soften his physical demands. Instead, he chooses engagement, not recklessly, intentionally. And that intentionality reveals something profound. He does not perform action merely to preserve image. He performs it because it aligns with identity. For Jason Statham, movement is language, training is meditation, control is freedom. As the industry continues evolving, as technology reshapes storytelling, as younger actors rise with different methods and digital enhancement, his code remains steady: prepare thoroughly, speak sparingly, execute cleanly. This philosophy has carried him from obscure beginnings to international recognition without dramatic scandal, without public collapse, without self-destruction. It is not flashy, but it is enduring, and endurance is the rarest quality in Hollywood. In the next chapter, we move beyond mindset into legacy, examining how Jason Statham influenced modern action cinema, how he reshaped expectations of physical authenticity, and how a former diver quietly redefined what it means to be an action star in the 21st century. In a world increasingly dominated by computer-generated spectacle, where capes flutter in artificial wind and entire cities collapse inside digital frameworks, Jason Statham chose something radically different. He chose reality, not documentary realism, not quiet drama, but physical authenticity, the kind that makes audiences lean forward in their seats because somewhere deep inside, they know what they are seeing is not entirely manufactured. When Jason emerged as a leading action figure in the early 2000s, Hollywood was transitioning. Practical stunts were slowly being replaced by green screens. Wirework and digital enhancement were becoming standard. The human body, once the centerpiece of action cinema, was being assisted, sometimes overshadowed by technology. But Jason's appeal was rooted in capability. He did not look like he needed saving by editing. He looked like he could survive the fall. That distinction matters more than most realize. In films like The Transporter, audiences could feel the impact of every collision. The choreography was tight, grounded in martial arts disciplines that demanded discipline rather than exaggeration. The camera did not need to cut rapidly to disguise inexperience. His movements were deliberate, efficient, real. That efficiency became his signature. Unlike exaggerated heroes who rely on theatrical bravado, Jason's characters operate on economy. Few words, minimal gestures, maximum effect. It is a style influenced not by fantasy but by training, diving, combat sports, physical conditioning. As superhero universes expanded, many assumed traditional action stars would fade into nostalgia. Yet Jason persisted, not by competing with spectacle, but by offering contrast. He represented tangible risk. In interviews and behind-the-scenes footage, audiences saw him rehearsing complex fight sequences, training rigorously, and executing demanding stunts. This visibility reinforced credibility. It reminded viewers that the human body, when trained relentlessly, remains compelling. Younger actors entering the action genre began adopting similar approaches, emphasizing mixed martial arts training, performing more of their own stunts, striving for grounded choreography. The standard shifted subtly. Physical authenticity became aspirational again. Jason was not alone in this movement, but he was central to it. His collaborations with directors like Guy Ritchie and involvement in franchises such as Fast and Furious ensured global reach. Millions witnessed his method. Millions internalized the expectation that action should feel earned. And perhaps his greatest contribution to modern action cinema is restraint. He rarely portrays invincibility. His characters bleed, they are injured, they are cornered, they calculate survival rather than dominate recklessly. That vulnerability, carefully controlled, adds weight to every confrontation. It humanizes strength. In Wrath of Man, his performance leaned into quiet intensity, long silences, controlled anger. The violence, when it came, felt consequential rather than flamboyant. It reminded audiences that action does not require constant explosion to remain powerful. Meanwhile, projects like Spy demonstrated his ability to subvert his own image. By parodying hyper-masculine spy tropes, he revealed awareness of the genre's excesses. It was a self-reflective moment, proof that he understood the machinery he operated within. Legacy is not built on one film, it is built on consistency. Over more than 2 decades, Jason Statham maintained a standard of physical credibility rarely diluted by shortcuts. He avoided over-reliance on digital enhancement. He prioritized preparation over convenience. He respected the craft of stunt performance. Stunt teams, coordinators, and fight choreographers have often spoken about his professionalism, his willingness to train extensively, his focus during complex sequences, his refusal to compromise safety while maintaining intensity. That balance, risk without recklessness, defines his influence. In the larger context of action cinema history, he occupies a transitional space. He bridges the muscular dominance of 1980s heroes with the tactical realism of modern combat choreography. He carries echoes of Stallone and Schwarzenegger while aligning with contemporary martial arts-driven narratives. But he never imitates, he refines. Even as franchises evolve and streaming reshapes consumption habits, his name signals something specific. Audiences know they will witness grounded combat, disciplined pacing, controlled aggression. That reliability builds trust, and trust builds longevity. Yet legacy is not merely professional. It is cultural. Jason Statham helped reintroduce stoic masculinity without theatrical excess. He presented strength as calm rather than loud, capability as quiet rather than boastful. His characters rarely brag, they act. In an era often saturated with exaggerated heroics, that restraint resonates. But legacy also carries responsibility. As time progresses, as younger generations redefine heroism, the question arises: how will his influence evolve? Will it remain a template? Will it transform? Will it become nostalgic? These questions are inevitable. And Jason Statham's story is still unfolding. In the next chapter, we confront the realities of aging within an unforgiving genre, the physical toll. Time is the one opponent no action hero can defeat. On screen, villains fall. Empires collapse. Explosions light the sky and fade into smoke. But off-screen, time moves without spectacle. It does not roar, it advances silently. For Jason Statham, whose career has been built on physical command, the passage of time carries a unique weight. Born in 1967, he entered his 50s not as a retired icon reminiscing about past glories, but as an active working action star still performing demanding roles. That fact alone defies industry expectation. Many actors gradually retreat from physically intense characters as age advances. The body demands compromise. Jason chose a different path, but that choice required evolution. In his 20s and 30s, physical performance relied heavily on raw conditioning strength, explosiveness, endurance. Recovery came naturally. Injuries healed quickly. Fatigue was temporary. In his 40s and 50s, strategy replaced instinct. Training shifted toward sustainability. Functional strength over brute force. Mobility over maximum load. Precision over power. Each movement became calculated not just for performance but for preservation. The human body is resilient, but it is not invincible. Ligaments tighten, reaction times shift subtly, impact accumulates. Jason understands this intimately. He does not deny aging, he manages it. They see the finished product, the fight scene executed flawlessly, the sprint across collapsing terrain, the controlled aggression. What they do not see are the hours of preparation designed specifically to minimize long-term damage. Warm-ups that extend far beyond what cameras capture. Recovery protocols involving cold exposure, stretching, targeted strengthening, nutritional discipline refined to reduce inflammation, sleep guarded fiercely. It is no longer about proving strength, it is about maintaining capability. There is humility in that approach. He does not attempt to compete with younger performers on their terms. He adapts his choreography to emphasize efficiency. His characters rarely rely on reckless athleticism. They rely on timing, awareness, and tactical precision. This shift mirrors maturity. Strength becomes measured rather than explosive. Movement becomes economical rather than flamboyant. And audiences respond because authenticity evolves with age. Jason does not attempt to portray a 25-year-old invincible hero. He embodies a seasoned figure, someone who understands danger deeply, who calculates rather than reacts blindly. There is a gravity to that presence. Yet beneath professionalism lies something more personal. Aging confronts identity. When one's public image is intertwined with physical dominance, the natural question arises, who am I if my body cannot perform as it once did? Jason approaches that question with foresight rather than fear. He has gradually expanded his involvement beyond pure action spectacle. Collaborations with directors like Guy Ritchie allow exploration of tone, nuance, psychological intensity. The action remains, but it is layered with complexity. This is not retreat, it is refinement. The physical toll of decades in the genre cannot be dismissed. Bruises accumulate, strains recur. Off-screen, fatherhood adds another dimension to this awareness. The body is no longer only a tool for performance. It is a vessel responsible for presence, for being there in the future, not just surviving today's stunt. This perspective tempers risk. It does not eliminate it. Jason Statham's endurance is not defined solely by how long he can perform physically demanding roles. It is defined by how intelligently he navigates transition. He is not racing against time. He is pacing alongside it. In cinema history, some action stars clung desperately to youthful portrayal, resisting adaptation until audiences turned away. Others withdrew entirely, choosing safety over relevance. Jason charts a middle path. He preserves intensity while accepting maturity. He adjusts choreography while maintaining credibility. He acknowledges physical reality without surrendering to it. That quiet negotiation with time is perhaps his most understated battle, and it is ongoing, because longevity in Hollywood is rarely about a single breakthrough. It is about sustained evolution. In the next chapter, we move toward culmination, examining the full arc of Jason Statham's journey, from uncertain beginnings to established legacy, and reflecting on what his story ultimately represents in the larger narrative of modern cinema. Every legend, no matter how powerful, begins in silence, not in applause, not in recognition, but in obscurity. When we look at Jason Statham today, the controlled intensity, the global recognition, the box office strength, it is easy to forget how uncertain his beginning truly was. There was no child actor spotlight, no early Hollywood grooming, no guaranteed trajectory. There was only a young man navigating disappointment after his diving career concluded without Olympic glory. A disciplined athlete stepping into adulthood without a roadmap. A street vendor learning how to read people because survival demanded it. That chapter could have been the entire story. Many lives remain in that phase, talented, hardworking, unseen. But Jason's arc did not end there. From the moment Guy Ritchie cast him in Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels, the wheel began turning, slowly at first, carefully, then with growing momentum. Snatch sharpened his presence. The Transporter carved his identity. Crank amplified his boldness. The Mechanic refined his precision. The Expendables aligned him with legends. Fast and Furious embedded him in global mythology. The Meg expanded his scale. Wrath of Man deepened his tone. Each role added a layer, none erased the previous one. That continuity is rare. Some actors reinvent themselves repeatedly, shedding past identities to survive. Jason built forward instead. He did not abandon his foundation, he strengthened it, and that foundation was always rooted in control. He never relied on dramatic controversy to remain relevant, never depended on public spectacle, never allowed scandal to define his narrative. His career was constructed through repetition of discipline, film after film, year after year. While trends shifted, while genres rose and fell, he maintained trajectory. But the most compelling aspect of his journey is not commercial success. It is transformation without distortion. He entered the industry as an athlete searching for direction. He evolved into an action star without losing the athlete's mindset. He achieved fame without abandoning privacy. He embraced global visibility without sacrificing identity. The arc from obscurity to endurance is not glamorous in every chapter. It includes rejection, risk, physical strain, criticism, and the ever-present uncertainty of relevance. Yet through each stage, a pattern emerges: resilience. When his athletic career ended quietly, he adapted. When early acting roles carried no guarantees, he committed. When critics questioned his range, he refined nuance. When the industry shifted toward digital spectacle, he emphasized authenticity. When age introduced physical limits, he recalibrated strategy. This is not the story of meteoric rise followed by collapse. It is the story of steady construction, brick by brick, scene by scene, year by year. And now, decades after that uncertain young diver stood at a crossroads, Jason Statham occupies a space earned through persistence rather than hype. He is not simply a recognizable name. He is a symbol of consistency in an industry defined by volatility. His legacy is not confined to explosive sequences or franchise earnings. It resides in the subtle recalibration of what modern action can look like: grounded, disciplined, controlled. From Shirebrook, Derbyshire, to the world's largest screens, his arc reflects something universal. You do not need immediate validation to build impact. You do not need flawless beginnings to create lasting influence. You need resilience. And perhaps that is why his story resonates beyond cinema. Because beneath the choreography and spectacle lies a narrative, familiar to many: uncertainty transformed through discipline,